What's up, everybody? This is Jason, Zombie Collector, and doing a little movie-based video. I needed to get away from all the negativity and ridiculousness of the world right now, and I thought I'd do one here on Mr. QT. Not QT Marshall for you AEW fans, but Quentin Tarantino. I believe I have all his films over here. I think I have all of them and some of the ones that maybe you didn't even know he was involved with. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Hopefully, this will be enjoyable for you guys. If not, sorry. I'm sure most of you all have already popped off on the ones who, when I said movies, you're like, oh, God, here we go again with the movies. So, with that being said, the first one up, and there's no specific order, by the way, and I've shown this off in another video, so I'm just going to kind of hit up on it. This is Four Rooms, came out in, I believe, like 94 or 5, maybe. I can't remember, maybe like 94, 95. But it's four different directors. They have four different rooms where they use their own actors in those said rooms. And Tim Roth is a thread that goes throughout it. He's a bellhop. And Quentin Tarantino's in the fourth room, and that's the one he directed. And it's interesting. I like it. It's completely different than anything else he's ever done. It's a lot more just his typical dialogue with not a lot of action or kind of set pieces or a lot of huge build up where he's really known for. It's just, Tim Roth is thrown into this unbelievable situation that he's been going through the entire night. And then he ends up in that room that Quentin Tarantino had directed. And I want to say he's also in it too. He might play a character in it if I'm not mistaken. But it's been so long since I've watched it, I can't remember. But it's a good movie. Quentin Tarantino, a lot of people don't know, did direct one of the episodes rooms in this movie. So there's the first one up. Another one is, I believe there's three different variations of this still book. I have two of them. I could be wrong. There may be more, but I think there's at least three. This is by Japanese director Takashi Miike. And it is Sukiyaki Western Django. Or Django. Just kidding, guys. Don't get mad. Sukiyaki Western Django. So it's in the vein of the spaghetti westerns from back in the day, like the Clint Eastwood stuff. And Miike brings in Quentin Tarantino. He has a small role at the beginning of the movie that kind of sets the entire pace, I guess you can say. It's a hard movie to get through because Miike decided to have all the Japanese actors say all their lines phonetically in English. So these Japanese actors who do not speak English are having to say the entire movie, all their lines in English. And it's one, hard to understand because a lot of it you can't really make out what they're saying without subtitles. And two, there's no like emotion really behind it. I mean, you can understand that they're yelling or screaming like they're mad or whatnot. But it's like, some of the scenes where probably need to bring it down a notch. They're just like overtly excitable, and it's just like there's a little bit overacting. There's a few actresses in here who actually do speak English, and so it's obvious for them. Like Coyote Momoi, she is in lots of other different movies, both English and English-speaking roles, and in Japan. She does speak English, and she's fine. But everybody else in here, it's kind of a pretty painful. But it's a fun watch, and the Quentin Tarantino is just goofy, and he kind of plays a little bit the character he plays in Django Unchained, where he plays like the Australian outback slaver or whatever he's supposed to be. I can't remember what exactly he's supposed to be in it, but he kind of has that. It's kind of like that vibe, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if these are even available anymore, if you can find them easily, but these were back in the day a little bit sought after items. So there is a Sukiyaki Western Django, or Django. That might be showing up later on. Next up is the second movie he ever made, which is Pulp Fiction. This is the collector's edition. A lot of these movies I'm not going to give a whole lot of information on. I just kind of want to introduce a few people to maybe some movies they didn't know he was involved with, or show you some different cool variation covers or releases that you may or may not know about. So here you got Uma Thurman. Her daughter, and Ethan Hawke's daughter, is actually in Stranger Things now. Her name is Maya Hawke, and she plays the sidekick to I believe it's Steve and Dustin's character in the Scoops Ahoy and Stranger Things. So that's their actual biological daughter, which is pretty cool. But you have Uma Thurman here. I mean, like I said, you all know, I'm sure at this point, you got Ving Rhames and Bruce Willis, and you got Uma Thurman, and you got the 2 discs there with Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta. So again, guys, that is a cool variation. There's a couple different. Oops, I put this in wrong there. I put it in wrong. Sorry, guys. But there's a couple like snap cases of this version as well, or just your regular DVD version. But I like this collector's edition. It's my go-to. Then let's see what's up next. This is the movie that put them on the map. Reservoir Dogs, right here. Now, this is a collector's edition of this. This is obviously gas can. You pop the top here, and the discs inside, along with some other goodies, I believe. So you have this little insert here for the video game. Look at that, back in the day, that was a PS2. And then you have the discs right here. It looks like matches. It looks like a matchbook if you think about it. It looks like just like a matchbook. Home of the Big Kahuna Burger. Uncle Bob's Pancake House. So this is really cool if you like this kind of thing, which I love. Anything that involves special collector's packaging. And again, you all probably, I'm sure most everybody knows about this movie. A couple gangsters doing gangster stuff. And then one of them is a rat. And then they spend the rest of the movie trying to figure out who the rat is as they're getting taken out one by one, or as the story unfolds where they're getting taken out by the police and their stories unfold and kind of talk about how they even got there. But this is the movie that put Quentin Tarantino on the map. And kind of set him up for the music he does and kind of like the way he cuts and edits his movies, the way he does his like time loops about using backwards and forwards and starting the movie out at maybe the middle of the movie, even sometimes at the end of the movie, and then jump forward to explain how they got there. Things that you really never saw in American cinema until Tarantino kind of brought that to the forefront. And Reservoir Dogs is a great movie with great acting and kind of, like I said, put him on the map. I mean, Quentin Tarantino did not do Reservoir Dogs. Quentin Tarantino's not the Quentin Tarantino we understand and who we know now. Next up is he wrote the story for this. I believe that's the only accolade he got for this, because I think it was rewritten, or the draft they did, like they did a draft of it, might have went over some of what Tarantino had done when he did the original story. So I don't know how much is left of Quentin Tarantino, but he still gets a story credit, and that is Natural Born Killers. Probably a lot of people don't know this, but Oliver Stone directed this movie. This is, I believe, the original uncut version, yes. And you have Mickey and Mallory Knox, I believe, and their crazy killing spree through the America West. It's a very good movie. But Quentin Tarantino, again, does the story for this. I'm going to look here and see if he gets any other credit. I don't believe he does. See if there's anything up there, but it just shows not. But I believe the screenplay was rewritten for Oliver Stone. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I watched a commentary or a discussion with Quentin Tarantino about this movie, and another one he did, and he talks about how he's not really happy with the product that they put out. Like, they did some big revisions of his idea. But a lot of people don't know that he did do the story. The concept came from Quentin. I kind of like to see a Quentin Tarantino version of this. And I think you do see some Quentin Tarantino-esque type things that happen. I mean, there's a lot of pop culture references. There's a lot of old versus new with like Rodney Dangerfield and all that kind of like, this kind of scuzzy underbelly type stuff. So there's a lot of that. Obviously, there's a lot of gore when it comes to the action, which is a Quentin Tarantino kind of hallmark. He's not one to shy away from that. So anyways, right here, a movie that really doesn't get talked about a lot anymore, but it still is a pretty tough watch, especially the underrated version with Tommy Lee Jones and he's in here, and some bad things happen to old Tommy Lee. There's some stuff with Rodney Dangerfield, and then some of the other lesser characters in this, but also Robert Downey Jr. is in here, and he plays a real scuzzy scumbag type guy as well. So, anyways, it's a really good movie, I think. If you have not checked it out, definitely check it out. But I highly recommend watching it, because if you have not, it's eye-opening for just visual effects and story. It's very good. Next up is a movie that he is in, but I don't think he has anything to do with, aside from he just has a small acting role in it. And it is Desperado. Probably my very favorite scene in this movie. It might be the favorite Quentin Tarantino scene in any movie, is when he discusses about getting paid to pee in everybody's face. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you got to check this movie out. That 3-minute clip where he's explaining about his story, you can kind of tell this is a vibe off of Reservoir Dogs, because Reservoir Dogs, he has a scene in that movie where he's like, the guy's pretending to be a police officer, but the guy's actually a police officer. He's pretending to be kind of like a gangster. So he has a story he has to share with other gangsters about kind of how gangster he really is. And he has all these details in the story to kind of make it, to sell it. Well, that scene almost feels like the exact same scene in this, where Quentin Tarantino now is delivering a monologue about how he was in a situation about how to make some money off of these people, just pretty much take them for their money, because he fools the barkeeper, whatever. So that scene, the movie itself is awesome. Action movie. You don't know, Antonio Banderas is a suitcase wielding gunslinger from Mexico, who I believe in the past had killed his wife and then shot him in the hand or whatever. So he has a vendetta against this whole like drug cartel, where he goes around like seeking vengeance. He hooks up literally with Salma Hayek, which is so super hot, and they kind of join forces, so to speak. But he ends up taking care of business, and there's a scene in there where Tarantino and somebody else are like drug runners for the cartel, and somebody's story checks out, somebody else's story doesn't check out, let's say. But Quentin Tarantino's 3-minute dialogue, hilarious. Seriously. Then we have, I believe there's 4 variations of the, not only if it's the original release, but one of the special edition releases. And this is, of course, again, Reservoir Dogs. This is Quentin Tarantino's version, Mr. Brown. There you have the signature on there, which I don't think's on the orange, white, and pink versions, because white is Mr. White's Harvey Keitel, Mr. Pink's Steve Buscemi, and Mr. Orange is Tim Roth's character. And so right here you have Quentin. I don't think any of them else have the signature, but he is the director. He also is Mr. Brown in this. And, he doesn't do a whole lot of acting in this. He has a few scenes. Nothing spectacular. But this is one of 4 variation covers I'm aware of. There may be more, but I think I've only seen 4. And they're all relatively easy to get. And here, as you can see, this one opens up. You have an insert in here, Mr. Brown. And then you have this. And then the DVDs are pretty much standard DVD, which everybody has seen, with the different colors right there. Oh, there might be a Mr. Blonde cover now that I see that. Mr. Blonde, which is a little interesting. It's not Mr. Yellow, it's Mr. Blonde. So there you go. So then you have those. Next up is a movie that probably is least like his other movies, though he is the director of this movie, but it's based off of a screenplay or a book by Elmore Leonard. I believe it's called Rum Punch. And this is called, his version is Jackie Brown. So if I'm not mistaken, Quentin Tarantino probably did the screenplay for this, based off of the book from Elmore Leonard. But this right here, you have Jackie Brown, who is Pam Grier. He literally revamped Pam Grier's career, because Pam Grier was like a huge star in the 70s for blaxploitation movies. She did Coffee, Sheba Baby, what is it called? There's the Girls in a Cage. There was a Roger Hill movie, I believe, or Robert Hill. Jack Hill, there we go, Jack Hill. She also did Sheba Baby, Coffee. Oh my gosh, what are some of the other ones she did? Foxy Brown, there you go. Anyway, she was in lots of blaxploitation movies, and that's pretty much what her bread and butter was. She did some other exploitation, like I said, the Jack Hill stuff, like Women in Cages and that kind of thing. She did a couple of those back probably before she became the star that she was in blaxploitation. But she kind of fell off the radar. I think she might have did some stuff in the 80s. After he picked her up to do this movie, her career took off. She did Ghosts of Mars. She did the L Word on, I think, Showtime. And then she did a handful of other stuff. I think she did the original Gangsters. There's, like I said, a few other things. But again, this is a good one. He had, like, Bridget Fonda's in here, Robert De Niro, Samuel Jackson plays a character in here. It is, again, it has very much a Quentin Tarantino-esque vibe, but it is not his typical type of movie, I don't think. And you can feel that. I used to think this was probably one of my favorite films of his, but then other movies came after that. And so now it's not at the top anymore. But I did really enjoy this movie, for sure. Next up is a movie that he just, I believe, produced. He was just kind of like producer on the film. I don't even know if he had much to do with it. It is a fun biker film, has a very strong 60s vibe. It's called Hell Ride. A lot of people don't talk about it, but it was from the Dimension Extreme release. There's nobody huge in this movie that you'd recognize. There are a few bit actors. You have Michael Madsen's probably the biggest actor in here, who played Mr. Blonde. He was also in Sin City. He was in, I believe, he's in tons of stuff. But he was in The Hateful Eight, which actually I don't own. Hateful Eight is probably the only movie I don't own on Blu-ray or DVD. But you also have, who else? You have Vinnie Jones in here from Snatch, or Lock and Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch fame. You also have Dennis Hopper is in here for a small bit. He's pretty good in it. You also have David Carradine, who's in it for a small role. Larry Bishop. So there's a few of them that's in there. It's a biker movie, guys. Lots of guns, lots of girls, lots of action. It's kind of like a double cross whodunit type thing. It's a movie I don't know if it get made anymore. There's some pretty risque, not most politically correct stuff happening in this movie. I don't know how much you can get away with it nowadays. Who knows? But it's an interesting movie. I'm not saying it's a good movie. It's an interesting movie. But it's definitely worth a watch. I mean, you can probably get that movie for like a few bucks. It's definitely worth a few bucks. Next up is Inglourious Bastards. And so you have, this is Quentin Tarantino's revisionist history on World War II, where you have a group of Jewish soldiers sneaking in to France to exact revenge and try to kill Hitler. And you have some nonsense stuff like Eli Roth pretending to be the Jew Bear, where he just, apparently being from Boston and wearing a wife beater is all you need to be scary. And he walks out of a cave with a baseball bat. And even the German's not impressed. Even the one who's getting ready to die, he's just kind of like, all right, I guess I'm going to die by this goofy looking, jag-off. But anyways, it's a very interesting movie. I like it. I feel like there's way too much talky in this movie. This is probably the one movie that suffers the most from Quentin Tarantino's dialogue. There's a whole lot. There's like a whole subplot with a French girl and I believe a French guy, and she owns a cinema, and it's an integral part of the story with how they're going to try to get rid of Hitler. But it's kind of ridiculous because like they have like this kind of like love affair going, and she's trying to pretend to be on the German side, but really she's actively trying to get rid of the Nazis and Hitler in particular. And it's just a silly subplot, and they're like doing all this talking about cinema, French cinema, and war ravaged France and during World War II. It just doesn't seem like that's not realistic, and I mean it's just kind of silly. And then there's some great acting by Christopher Waltz, fantastic. I think actually Brad Pitt's great in this. It's probably like his I forgot his character name, but it's really even silly sounding. It's does it even say on here? Does it give it? I can't remember his actual name, but it's pretty funny sounding. But anyways, you have one of the best scenes. They have a Mexican standoff in a German bar, which is awesome. I love that. That's really good. You have Michael Fassbender in a pretty significant role that most before he got kind of super famous with the whole X-Men stuff. Mike Myers is in this, not the killer from the Halloween movies, but Austin Powers Mike Myers. He plays a character in this, which is pretty good. But anyways, like I said, I would say if it wasn't for all the overt, like quasi love story ish type thing with a lot of extra acting, talkie, it'd be a lot better. Next up is the Django Unchained Blu-ray. So this is I believe there's a specific release maybe that Target it came across. I believe this is a 2-disc set, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, it's a revisionist history of the South during Civil War times. Like I believe it's right before the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken. And so it pretty much Django, Jamie Foxx's character, ends up hooking up with a dentist turned bounty hunter, and they hunt criminals who could try to blend into society, but they have a criminal past, and they hunt them down and they kill them for a reward, as a bounty hunter would. And essentially, Django becomes his assistant, and then becomes essentially the premier bounty hunter himself. Like he has a knack for it. And then he wants to go rescue his wife, who is in Candyland, Monsignor Candy, who is Leonardo DiCaprio, and he plays the most despicable character. I mean, literally, I don't think I could ever hate someone as much as I hate that character. He really goes for it. I mean, he goes for it. Like a lot of people I know, like Samuel L. Jackson talks about how he's probably the most despised black person in cinema because of the things he does to black people in this movie. Samuel L. Jackson character plays the head, I guess, slave or house slave, and he does some really despicable things to Django and his wife and all that kind of stuff. And so it's probably worse because it's he's black, and that's probably makes it worse. And you can expect a little bit coming from a white guy like DiCaprio because he's a slave owner and plantation owner. But man, it is awful. Some of the stuff that they do in this, and they have like Mandingo fighting, which I didn't know was a thing. I don't know if it really is. But it is awful, literally awful. And I mean, this is by far a movie that is not for the weak or a weak stomach, but it is very interesting. A fantastic acting. There's a bunch of cameos in this movie of all kinds of famous actors, people that Tarantino's never worked with before. It is really good. And just the acting. Jamie Foxx is outstanding in this. Samuel L. Jackson's outstanding. He's outstandingly awful I can't even think of his name all of a sudden. I'm like trying to block it out. But and then you have Leonardo DiCaprio. And then Christoph Waltz, again, fantastic job. I mean, the whole movie is outstanding. It's not a wonder that movie had gotten so much accolades and support. And then I'll go ahead and show the other one. This is a DVD release of Django. And this is a 2-disc set as well. So there you go. But again, it's the DVD. The other one I'll show also was the Blu-ray. And the movie that a lot of people don't know that he also was written by, he also did the story, and is the movie called True Romance. This is directed by Tony Scott, starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, a young Gary Oldman in it, Brad Pitt, and Christopher Walken. That is a cornucopia of fantastic actors. There is a scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper that is literally amazing. The dialogue that they give, I mean, that definitely is a Quentin Tarantino dialogue. There's no way Tony Scott, I don't believe it, is in this. Val Kilmer pretends to be, plays Elvis. Brad Pitt plays like he's in one of the very first roles. He plays like a high roommate who's like perpetually on 420 mode. But I highly recommend this movie. It's a great movie. It's a real like urban kind of like gangster film filled with like despicable characters with a few like silver linings with even the Christian Slater character, Patricia Arquette, about how they meet. But it is a very, very good movie that never gets talked about much anymore. Again, it's a movie that came out in the 90s. I want to say like 94 maybe, 93 also. It's a movie, but True Romance, guys, check it out. It's a fantastic movie, and I'm going to follow it up with two last movies. You got really the two separate movies. Well, I got three. I got Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2. And I really like these movies. This is the Blu-rays edition, of course. There's all kinds of variations of these movies out